He's wearing a Carhartt jacket with a tear on the left sleeve he's never bothered to patch. He drives an 11-year-old F-150, the paint fading unevenly across the hood. He picks his kid up from school in it every day at 3:15, and nobody in the pickup line looks twice. His brokerage account alone is worth $4.1 million. He hasn't touched the principal in 6 years. He paid cash for the truck. He hasn't carried a credit card balance since before his kids were born. You would never guess. And that's not an accident. That's the whole video. But stay, because the reason your brain can't detect wealth when it's standing 3 feet away from you in a windbreaker is the exact same reason you might be quietly working against your own future without ever realizing it. There's a guy at your gym, or your kid's baseball game, or 2 people ahead of you at the hardware store on a Saturday morning. He wears a jacket that's a decade old. His watch is a $40 Casio he's had since college. He orders the same black coffee every day and has never once asked what the seasonal one costs. His house is fine, 3 bedrooms built in the 90s, nothing that would make you stop scrolling if it showed up on a real estate app. He is, statistically, one of the wealthiest people you've ever stood next to. You have no idea because he never gave you a reason to think otherwise. That invisibility isn't luck. It's the strategy. And once you understand how it works, you won't be able to look at a driveway, a watch, or a vacation photo the same way again. Because here's what nobody explains to you growing up. Looking wealthy and being wealthy aren't just different things. In America, they are overwhelmingly opposite things. The people spending the most to look rich are statistically the least likely to be. And the people who actually are wealthy have, in most cases, quietly opted out of the entire performance years ago. Think about the last time something made you feel behind. Not poor, behind. Maybe it was a coworker's new SUV in the parking lot. Maybe it was someone's tagged location at a resort you'd never pay for. Maybe it was just the ambient noise of every ad, every feed, every storefront, quietly agreeing that the entire point of having money is making sure other people can tell. That training starts early, and it never really stops. Somewhere along the way, you learned that a certain jacket meant something, that a certain car in the driveway meant something else, that the version of an adult worth respecting was the one whose life photographed well. Nobody sat you down and taught you this directly. It arrived the way water arrives, everywhere, all the time, until you stop noticing it was there at all. That signal is not free. The global luxury goods market is worth roughly $480 billion this year alone, and almost none of that spending is coming from the people economists would classify as actually wealthy. It's coming from people financing the appearance of a life they haven't fully built yet. Meanwhile, on the other side of the same town, something quieter was happening. A guy stopped leasing and bought a 5-year-old Accord outright. A woman got promoted, didn't move, and redirected the difference into her 403B without telling a soul. A couple in a suburb of Cincinnati has been maxing out 2 Roth IRAs since 2011 and still hasn't been on a plane in 4 years, and they will tell you, if you ask, that they don't feel like they're missing anything because from where they're standing, nothing is actually happening. No arrival, no milestone. Just quiet, compounding arithmetic running in the background of an unremarkable life. They were never playing the same game. They were never even watching the same scoreboard. And the truly important part is this: they never intended to. Here's what nobody tells you about the truck payment sitting on top of the mortgage in a subdivision outside Phoenix. It isn't proof of wealth. It's proof of something that resembles wealth closely enough to satisfy a craving that actual wealth would have made unnecessary in the first place. There's a name for that craving. Economists call it status signaling. The very human, very old, very expensive need to prove something to an audience that is paying far less attention than you assume. And the American economy has spent decades getting extraordinarily good at feeding it. We are fluent in brand the way other cultures are fluent in language. We can price a car within a few $1,000s from across a parking lot. We clock the watch, the shoes, the airline status, the exact tone someone uses when they mention their trainer. We read these signals constantly, automatically, and we respond to them exactly the way we were trained to. The truly wealthy understand this about the rest of us. So they use it. Not maliciously, just strategically. They let the performance economy run its loop all around them while they quietly step outside of it. They keep the windbreaker. They keep the accord. They fly economy and don't mention that the account behind that decision just crossed a number that would completely rearrange how you saw them if you knew. You don't know. That's the entire point. There's something the truly wealthy understand about money that most people never get around to learning. Not because it's complicated, because nobody ever taught it to them, and the culture is actively organized against them ever finding out. Real wealth is invisible by design. Not because wealthy people are hiding it out of shame, because the assets that actually build lasting security are, by their nature, things you cannot photograph. They live in brokerage statements, in tax-advantaged accounts, in ownership stakes and paid-off principal. They don't make noise at a dinner party. They just sit there, compounding, in the background of a completely ordinary-looking life, at a rate that would unsettle you if you compared it to the depreciation curve of the truck in the driveway next door. The guy in the Carhartt jacket isn't behind. He solved something you might still be working on. He figured out that every dollar has exactly two futures. It can leave his hands as performance, as signal, as the cost of maintaining an image he never actually chose for himself. Or it can stay, quietly, in an index fund or a rental property or a maxed-out retirement account, compounding year over year, without applause, without anyone in his life having the faintest idea it exists, until the number attached to his name is one his coworker with the new SUV couldn't catch if he started sprinting today. And here's the part that should sit with you for a second. Right now, in your office, your gym, your kid's school pickup line, there are people sitting on $1 million or more in net worth who you would never in 100 guesses identify as wealthy. Not because they're hiding it, because they look exactly like everyone else. Because looking exactly like everyone else was, quietly, the entire strategy. There are close to 24 million millionaires in the United States today, roughly 1 in every 14 adults. The overwhelming majority, somewhere near 88%, built that money themselves rather than inheriting it. And the typical person crossing that line for the first time isn't a 24-year-old with a Series A. It's someone in their late 40s or early 50s who spent nearly 3 decades doing the unglamorous, invisible thing consistently enough that it eventually became a number. You've met them. You just didn't recognize what you were looking at. There are tells, if you know what to look for. Not the ones the culture trained you to notice, not the watch, not the truck, not the zip code. Quieter ones. Tells that only make sense once you understand what the actual game is. They talk about time the way you talk about money. An hour spent doing something they could pay someone else to do gets weighed the same way you'd weigh a $200 purchase, not out of stinginess, but because somewhere along the way they decided time was the real asset and money was just what happened when time got pointed in the right direction. They'll wait 3 weeks for the contractor who does it right instead of paying triple to get someone there Thursday. They are almost aggressively unbothered by what things cost other people. You will never hear a truly wealthy person say, "Must be nice" about someone else's new car. Not because they're saints, because they opted out of that comparison so long ago it no longer registers as a comparison. It registers as noise. They also tend to be strangely calm about their own possessions wearing out. The truck with 190,000 miles doesn't get replaced because it turned a certain age. It gets replaced when it actually stops running. And even then, reluctantly, after a mechanic has been given every reasonable chance to talk them out of it. There's no emotional relationship to the object. It's a tool. Tools get used until they're used up. They ask different questions. Not what did that cost, but what does that do? Not how does this look, but what does this return? Run consistently across 25 or 30 years of decisions, those questions are the entire explanation for why the guy in the 11-year-old truck has $4.1 million and the guy with the new SUV is hoping the transmission holds until the next refinance. And then there's the emergency test. A $1,500 repair bill is, for most American households, a genuine crisis. A scramble, a phone call, a specific tightness in the chest that doesn't fully go away until the statement arrives and gets quietly pushed to next month. The truly wealthy experience that same $1,500 as a Tuesday, not because they don't care, because they built the buffer so long ago that unexpected costs stopped being emergencies and became just things that happen inside the general category of living. That shift, from financial anxiety to financial boredom, is what real security actually feels like from the inside. It doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like nothing, like the absence of a sound you'd forgotten was always there. Let's be honest about something. The performance economy isn't an accident. A $480 billion luxury market and a record $770 average monthly new car payment don't exist because people are naturally vain. They exist because an extraordinary amount of money and behavioral science has been spent, for decades, engineering the exact feeling that the version of you without the thing is a lesser version. Making the gap between where you are and where the purchase would put you feel like a gap worth financing at 22% interest. And it works. It works on smart people. It works on people who know better in the moment they're standing at the counter. See it, want it, finance it. Feel briefly like the version of yourself who has it. Notice that version feels roughly the same as the last one. See the next thing. It is arguably the most profitable loop ever built. The truly wealthy stepped outside that loop, mostly not through sheer discipline, but through one specific realization that usually arrives either from reading the right thing early or from hitting a wall hard enough that the wall rearranges what you thought it was made of. The realization is this: the feeling you're chasing was never for sale. The security, the quiet confidence that your family is going to be fine, that the future has some give left in it, that you are not one bad month from a decision you can't undo, that feeling doesn't live in the watch. It doesn't live in the truck, the square footage, or the boarding group. It lives in the account statement nobody sees, the one that just crossed the number that makes the job optional, the one that's completely invisible from the street and is, quietly, the entire point. Here's a number worth sitting with. The average American household is currently carrying about $6,700 in credit card debt at an interest rate north of 21%. More than a third of Americans say they're willing to go into debt just to take a vacation. Not for an emergency, not for anything necessary, but for a trip that exists largely to generate photos of a version of a life, sent to other people who are financing photos of their own. This isn't a moral judgment, it's a math problem. Every dollar sitting on a card at 21% isn't a neutral dollar. It's a dollar running in reverse, working against the person holding it in exactly the same way the truly wealthy person's dollar is working for them, quietly in the other direction. Over 30 years, that gap stops being a gap and becomes a canyon. It is the entire distance between the guy in the Carhartt jacket and the guy with the new SUV, and none of that distance is explained by income, intelligence, luck, or the zip code either one of them grew up in. It's the direction the dollars were pointed. And here's what makes that so hard to accept. From the street, from the office parking lot, from every angle, the culture trained you to judge people by, the guy with the new SUV looks like he's winning. He looks like the version of success you were sold. He isn't ahead. In the most literal financial sense of the phrase, he's behind, carrying debt on something losing value while the guy in the truck carries no debt on things that are gaining it. One of them is building an actual future. The other is building a very convincing performance of one. From the outside, you cannot tell which is which. That's the entire game. Nobody tells you that choosing the invisible path in a country built almost entirely on visibility comes with a real cost. Not financial. Financially, it's the best decision most people will ever make. Socially, it costs something. Something that never shows up on a balance sheet, but that you feel at every barbecue, every reunion, every scroll through a feed full of arrivals you've quietly decided not to make. You say no to the group trip to Cabo because you'd rather put that $3,000 into the account, and the real reason sounds, even inside your own head, like either deprivation or arrogance, and you're never entirely sure which. You show up to the office party in the same truck you've had since before the last two promotions, and someone makes a comment framed as a joke that lands like a question you weren't supposed to answer honestly. Your cousin, a genuinely good person, gets a bonus, and immediately buys the thing he's been mentioning for months. He's visibly, authentically happy about it for maybe 3 weeks. Then he's just a guy with a thing and a payment, and you sit with the quiet math of that moment and don't say anything, because nothing you could say would land right. You're not smarter than him. You just decided to keep score differently, and the two scoreboards don't fit at the same table. That quiet cost doesn't announce itself. It settles in slowly, the same way the gap widens every year between what's actually in the account and what anyone in your life would guess is in it. Some years it's a weight. Most years it's just a fact. But here's what's on the other side of that weight. Not wealth as an idea. Wealth is a specific feeling you cannot manufacture any other way. It's a Tuesday afternoon and the market drops 2% and your phone fills up with headlines about the economy and you read them calmly, close the phone, and go outside. Because the math still works. Because you built the cushion years ago while everyone around you was building a highlight reel. Because the retirement account is funded, the emergency fund is real, the truck is paid off, and the only thing you're actually investing in monthly is a future that's quietly becoming exactly what you designed it to be. The market can do whatever it wants. You went outside. That's the quiet life. That's what it costs to build it. And that's what it feels like once it's actually yours. There's one more thing underneath all of it, the thing that gives the whole story its actual weight. The truly wealthy aren't only making a financial decision. They're making a generational one. They're deciding what their kids grow up believing is normal. A kid who watches their parents chase the appearance of a rival learns to chase the appearance of a rival. The anxiety gets inherited. The wrong scoreboard gets inherited. The habit of looking outward for proof instead of inward at the math, that gets passed down as quietly and completely as anything else in the house. Nobody has to say a word. And a kid who grows up watching the account grow steadily in the background, in a house where index funds come up at the dinner table and the word equity isn't intimidating, starts from a different place entirely. Not just financially, structurally. The ceiling sits somewhere else for that kid, and they won't even know there was ever supposed to be one, because for them there isn't. There's just sky. That's what the guy in the Carhartt jacket is actually building, not a number. A different starting line for someone who isn't born yet. A kid who inherits a way of thinking about money instead of a pile of receipts to eventually untangle. A kid who never has to sit across from a financial advisor in their 40s, unlearning 3 decades of habits that were never actually theirs to begin with, because they were handed the right ones before they were old enough to know there was a wrong version. The new SUV doesn't do that. The resort doesn't do that. The bonus purchase doesn't do that. The brokerage account does. The maxed out retirement fund does. The paid off truck and the 3-bedroom house from the 90s, the one nobody stopped scrolling for, that does it. It's unglamorous. It's invisible. It might be the single most important thing a person can build in this country, and almost nobody will ever clap for it. Nobody will ask what it's called at the party. Nobody will screenshot it. Nobody's watching. Which is exactly why it works. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next.